I'm joined now by a longtime acquaintance, first time talking with, to the best of my knowledge. Alex Plechash joins us here. Alex, welcome to the Northern Alliance Radio Network. You just got back from Israel. Want to talk about that? Obviously, it's been on all the papers. First of all, introduce yourself to the audience, Alex.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mitch. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
I am principally the reason I'm talking today is I am the RNC committee man representing Minnesota on the RNC, and I'm a retired lieutenant colonel out of the Marine Corps, Naval Academy graduate, former fighter pilot, Top Gun guy, that sort of thing. But yeah, I went to Israel. Now it's been about 2 months. Last week in November, first week in December is when I was there, and that's the reason I'm on call today.
Yeah. Okay. So what? Yeah. I've talked to other people, not on the air, who have spent some time in Israel since the current war began. Given your perspective as someone who spent some time, at least looking at it and being in some of the nastier parts of the world here, tell us a little bit what people need to know about what's going on in Israel today, Alex.
Well, what I would say is that the common narrative that's out there is very misguided as to what this is all about. I will tell you that the people of Israel were horribly attacked. Yeah. Words really can't even describe the horror that was there. There was no justification for it whatsoever. It was actually the embodiment of evil. And people don't understand, I think, the history of Israel and the Jewish people, the nation, and the non-history of Palestine in terms of never actually been a country. So what was done on October 7th was just unprovoked, and it was horrible. And so what the RNC, at least a member of the RNC, Leora Levy out of Connecticut, she was the endorsed Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate. She's the national committee woman there, and she put it out to those of us in the RNC, anybody that wanted to go on a contingent. And I immediately raised my hand, of course. I knew that I wanted to go. And so we went out there it wasn't an officially sanctioned trip per se, but we all were representing the RNC to go there and show solidarity with the country and actually a bit of a fact-finding mission to actually see what had happened. We got there. We had armed security with us the whole time, and we met with some of the very top leaders in the government, in the military, in the intelligence community. And we went to many of the sites of the massacres that occurred. We talked to the people that were there. We were with the IDF. It was quite an educational week.
What was the biggest surprise? Anything surprise you? Obviously, you're fairly well connected on defense matters here, but even so, the scale of the atrocities committed on October 7th were clearly ghastly. I was actually in Norway on October 7th and saw the whole thing on their news, which, say what you will, they focus on the facts over on their television. There's a whole lot less agenda wrapped around the whole thing. So it was pretty shocking how horrible human beings can be to each other. Alex Plechash, anything surprise you since you've been over in Israel?
Well, two things come to mind. One is that, I did talk to and meet with a fair number of IDF soldiers.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about the generals and the people at the top. I'm talking about the regular IDF soldiers that were called up to respond to this.
Yep.
And one thing that surprised me, not that I thought about it ahead of time, but on reflection, what surprised me is that I did not detect anger or feelings of retribution or, we got to get back at these people from any of the people I met. These were just good people that were called up to do a job to, basically save their country. But there were no feelings of real anger. They just had a job to do and they were going to get it done. I'm not sure that everyone would feel that way when you actually comprehend the atrocities, but that's kind of what I felt there.
Yeah, I'm out there. I'm totally out there. Heck, if I went over there, I even as a Gentile, I'd probably have a hard time getting rid of the anger. Anyway, number two, yes, Alex Plechash, go right ahead.
The other thing is that because I was right there, not long after these things had occurred, the amount of evil that I saw and heard was more than I would have expected.
Yeah.
And, I've seen things that, I've spent some, career in the Marine Corps and all that. But what happened on that day was beyond words. And, I used the words when I came back with a couple of people said that this was worse than the Holocaust. And a lot of people might, kind of go back at that and say, well, you can't say that. Nothing can be worse than the Holocaust. Well, it was. And that's not my assessment. Those were words that actually were told to me by people in Israel. In fact, there were even members of the Knesset that I met with who said the same thing. Those were not my thoughts. Those were their thoughts. And the reason that I think that's true is because not only was that evil beyond description, but the people perpetrating it were having a good time when they were doing it.
Yeah.
Because they had body cameras on them to document what they were doing and sending it to social media real time and to basically say, here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It seems unfathomable to me that they would actually do that, but they did. And while I was there, I saw some of those videos. I saw the famous 47-minute video, which was not a documentary. It was basically just a compilation of what was recorded on that day.
Yeah.
And I saw some private video as well, which, again, words can't describe the horror.
Yeah, and in fact, that's one of the reasons I've heard. It's like it's indescribably evil, and yet with all the cameras and all of the live video that was underway, they did a great job of describing it for themselves. Something even the Nazis never did. At least it's hard to. It's not saying anything good about the Nazis that they at least tried to hide the extent of their crimes at the end of World War II unsuccessfully, but. They didn't. Hamas didn't even try to cover it up. They explained it very well live and in color and video, and that's was just so intensely nauseating. So, any particular? What's your takeaways from the trip here? Anything you want to take forward to this, or want to see people take forward about this on a policy level, Alex Plechash?
What I would say is that don't take my word for it. Go and study history. Go define the truth, because the truth evades us, it seems, in the common narrative. People that are out there protesting in favor of Palestine and Hamas, people that shout the words from the river to the sea, they really don't know what they're saying. They don't know what they're protesting for or against.
Yeah.
So I would say don't take my word for it. Go and actually study real history.
Yeah.
And I think you might come away with a different view.
In 1937, an anti-Semitic British diplomat came up with a plan for a two-state solution. The Arabs responded with one of the greatest pogroms outside of Kristallnacht back then. Killing hundreds of Jews in what they were called the Palestinian Mandate back then. 11 years later, 1948, there was a two-state solution drawn up by the United Nations, to which the Palestinians' backers responded by invading Israel, trying to wipe it off the map from the river to the aforementioned sea. 2006, Ehud Barak tried to give them their second state all by themselves for free. It's a gimme, and we see what happened there. So people who ask for the two-state solution, the proper response there is, okay, are we going to make it actually work this time? Show us some sense of good faith that this is going to end up like the last three attempts at a two-state solution.
Yeah, the thing I found there is that, I don't get into the politics of Israel because I don't understand it. I don't know it intimately at all.
Yeah.
I know enough to know that politics in Israel are every bit as complicated and diverse as they are here in our own country.
Yeah.
So, but when I was there, I sensed that there was a unity of purpose from all the factions, knowing that they had to eliminate the scourge of Hamas. Not a two-state solution, not a ceasefire. They had to complete the mission and eradicate Hamas. And a few people would say, well, there's two sides to the story. And I said, well, I guess there is. There is the truth and there is the non-truth. There is good and there is evil. So in that sense, there are two sides to the story. But Israel is determined to eliminate the scourge of Hamas to the very end, whatever that means. I don't think even people in Israel know what it's going to look like when they finally eradicate Hamas in Gaza. They can't just give it back to them like they did originally and say, here's your state, go with it, because we saw what happened. Hamas is a duly elected government, basically, of the Palestinians in Gaza. They were not terrorists. I mean, they are terrorists, but they weren't like an outside force. They were elected by the people there.
They cleaned up for a while.
Yeah. And so I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know that the country seems to be unified in their effort to eradicate it.
And one other question for you, and I know you got to get onto things, and so do I, but one other question, since you are a military guy, and you were a Marine, so you may have spent a little time learning small unit tactics at some point or another of your career. The one thing that I've heard from people in Israel is that when you think of urban combat, which most of what's going on in Gaza is, you think Stalingrad, you think Aachen, you think Fallujah, urban meat grinders that are just have an incredible butcher's bill. And from the sound of it, the Israelis have managed to carry out this intense urban combat at, I hate to say low cost, relatively low cost compared to what one expects when goes into a densely populated area that's been fortifying itself for 3 generations. Thoughts on that as a military man, Alex Plechash?
Well, first off, I was a fighter pilot, not in the infantry. So,
and if you were in an Air Force, I wouldn't have even asked if you were an Air Force or Navy guy, but you were a Marine, and every Marine's a rifleman, and you got to have some sympathy for the snuffies on the ground.
Absolutely. You know, we were there to support them. What I would say is, and this was based on my observation in Israel, is that Israel may be the most moral country on the planet, at least in terms of the military. Yeah. They went to the extreme to warn people that this was going to happen, to drop leaflets, to make announcements on social media, broadcast, radio, whatever, to say, we're going to take over this area. Please get out. And here's where you can go.
Yep.
I've not heard of that happening in any other kind of urban combat, but they did the best they can. But unfortunately, Hamas won't let their people go.
Yeah.
And they used them as human shields in hospitals and schools and in their religious facilities and so on. They kept them there, and so you have this collateral damage, which is unavoidable if they're going to just do that. But even still, they do it so methodically that they try to absolutely limit the number of civilian casualties while they need to progress. I've not seen that done anywhere else, not to the extent that Israel is doing it.
And to the extent of the civilian death toll that's existed, I like to remind some of my pro-Hamas or Hamas sympathetic neighbors that even the Germans and Japanese moved children away from first strike targets during World War II. I mean, even they were not quite as a horrible bunch of animals as Hamas seems to be. Alex Plechash, GOP committeeman, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your perspective. If you want to talk more about this, by all means, have your people call my people, because I could go on in this for a solid hour. But thanks for joining us today. Best of luck, and carry on out there. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Likewise. Northern Alliance Radio Network, AM 1280, The Patriot.